Hey, budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we talk about Coreopsis. So let's go. I've had some varieties of Coreopsis in my yard over the last many years, and I continue to add more varieties to my yard. I've always been a little confused when it comes to Coreopsis, so I did a bunch of research and I wanted to share some of my findings with you. But the biggest thing I wanted to share with you today is how to prune and deadhead your Coreopsis to make sure you get blooms all season long. Coreopsis, also known as tick seed, typically thrives in full sun. However, there are some varieties that you can get away with and put them in part sun conditions. The three main cultivars of Coreopsis are Grandiflora, there's also Rosea, and then finally there is Verticulata. The Grandiflora variety has a thicker leaf to it and a lot of times is considered an annual or a short-lived perennial. The Verticulata, oftentimes you'll also hear it called threadleaf Coreopsis, has a finer leaf to it and very wispy. It blows in the wind. It's such a pretty plant. And the big thing to know about that plant is that it's more of a long-living perennial. With Grandiflora, you might get bigger flowers. With Verticulata, you might find the smaller flowers. But the Verticulata definitely is a more longer living perennial to have in your flower garden. With any of these Coreopsis, the key is deadheading or pruning them back during the season. If you don't do that, you're basically telling the plant it's okay to go to seed, and if it's going to go to seed, it's not going to put out any or hardly any blossoms for you. So you want to really be good about deadheading or pruning back your Coreopsis during the season. What you see right here are two Coreopsis that I recently acquired. I got them from Walmart. They were marked down for middle of the season clearance. They were a very good find, and I figured I'd show you today my process for deadheading them. In case you want to watch that plant haul video, I'll be sure to put a link to that video down in the description below. When it comes to deadheading your Coreopsis, you can use a bunch of things. You can use your fingers, and you can just pinch off or snip off the spent blossoms off the plant. You can use something like this. These are called micro snips. They're very small, and they get right in for being able to cut off the spent blossoms. Something a little larger are hand pruners. Those are also great for deadheading. And if you want to do some sort of a hand pruning, you can use these hand shears. And that's great for just taking a whole bunch and just cutting them right back. This variety of Coreopsis is called Little Bang Starstruck. And you can see there is a lot of pretty blossoms in there. But there are also a bunch of blossoms that have gone by, and they're making the plant look a little bit messy. So we want to come in here and we want to clean this up. One thing you could do is just come in here and just pull off the tips like that. And that works. If you don't have any tools on hand and you just want to get out there and deadhead very quickly, you just come out here and pull off the tips. The only thing I'll mention about that technique is if you do that, you're going to be left with stems like this. And that looks still, in my opinion, kind of messy. But if I use something like hand snips and I take a stem like this one here, I follow it as far down as I can, and then I cut it, that just looks a lot cleaner in my opinion. Let's say that there were no blooms in here. There was mostly all of the spent blossoms that were left. Then I could come in with something like this and I could cut this plant back by, let's say, 1/2, but I'm not going to do that. But you definitely could do that if you had a plant that didn't have any blossoms in it and mostly just had spent blooms. Maintenance is very important for your plant. You want to make sure you're doing this as often as you can. It's not realistic to come out and do this daily, especially if you have a lot of Coreopsis, but definitely try to get after it pretty often just to have a healthy looking plant. The buds are right here. That's an example of a bud. And these are examples of buds as well. So like in this example here, I'm just going to follow this all the way down to the base. But I have to be careful because I don't want to snip off these buds. This is a tedious process, but in my opinion, it's worth it because this is one of many plants that will bloom for you all season long as you keep it deadheaded. Now, if you wanted to collect the seeds from a plant such as Coreopsis, then you wouldn't want to be doing this process. You would allow the plant to go to seed so that you could collect the seeds. I'll be making a video later this season showing you the process for collecting the seed off of Coreopsis in case you're interested in that. You can see the plant is already starting to look much better after cleaning it up. Look how much better this Coreopsis looks now that we've gone ahead and deadheaded it. Now keep in mind that that is not pruning. If we wanted to prune it, we would actually be taking some sort of scissors and cutting it back by, let's say, 1/2 or 1/3. What we did was just deadheading spent blossoms individually. And here's another example. This is called Little Bang Red Elf. Once again, you can see the blossoms at the base of the plant are there, but at the very top here are all the spent blossoms. We need to get those cut back as well. Look at that, so much better. The other thing I want you to notice is look at the shape and structure of the leaves on this type of Coreopsis. Now I'm going to bring you to another Coreopsis that I have in my landscape, and I want to show you the difference in what the leaves look like on that one. Notice the leaves on this Coreopsis. They look quite different than the ones that we just looked at. So with this Coreopsis, you can see there are only a few blossoms left. Otherwise, it's generally gone by. I don't want that. I want this to keep blooming. Could I come in here and individually deadhead each of these spent blossoms? Absolutely. That would be very tedious and very time consuming. I would rather not do that. Instead, I would rather come in here, take a bunch like this, and just cut it back. And I'm just cutting it back just enough so that it's an even cut all the way around. I would say I'm cutting it back about 1/3. It's really up to you how far you want to cut it back and how tall you want your plant to be. I could do that same process all the way around with this plant, but I just wanted to show you the method of basically pruning a plant back versus deadheading, which we did on the other plants. Remember, it is so important to prune or deadhead various perennials as well as annuals in your yard if you want them to keep reblooming for you and looking beautiful throughout your growing season. Other than showing you how to collect your own seeds off a Coreopsis plant, in the future I'll also make a video on how to divide this plant. So if you haven't already, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. As always, if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you, so please drop them down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.